Julie here from Just Plain Fun, and today's block is going to be the split chevron block. This is one of my own design. If it does exist anywhere else out there, I do not know. I haven't been able to find it, so I wouldn't know the real name of it. But I will give credit to where credit's due if I can find out if there's another name for it. This particular block is completely done quilt as you piece. I did this side first, and then I did this side, and then this piece was added. In this particular tutorial, you're also going to learn how I'm going to be joining the blocks together. It's by adding this one, and this one on the back. And this little seam right here is hand stitched. You could top stitch it if you want to. That's totally up to you, but I wanted the clean look, so I went and hand stitched it. And this block is slightly small, so I'll probably add a 1-inch frame around it before I add it to the quilt, but we'll get there when I get there. And let me show you how I made this. To get started, we're going to need the instructions, and I have them here, and since this particular pattern is not free, I'm covering up the sizes, and I am going to supply you with a couple of templates also right here, and what those are they're for pieces B, C, G, and H, and I just cut them on 2.5-inch and 2.25 inch strips of batting, and the fabrics, well, you can do what you need to get those cut out. This particular block is going to be made in a different way. We're going to do the strip last. We're going to make this side, and we're going to make this side, and then we're going to join them in the way that I'm going to be joining all of the blocks into this quilt using the 2.5-inch strips. But when I do the sashing for the quilt, they're also going to have cornerstones, but this is just going to have a strip, and this will show you how I'm actually going to join the blocks into the quilt. All right, so to get started, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do this section here, and then we'll do this section, and then we'll join this section and this section to the middle strip. So let's get started here. And I have all of my pieces cut and ready to go, and this is the one that we're going to start with. And notice I just cut my batting pieces into strips because they can be trimmed off later. And this one is going to be prepared first. It's going to be layered and then joined to this. And since we're doing this in the quilt as you go method, or quilt as you piece method actually, this is going to be a long drawn out video, and I hope you stay with me to the end. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to glue this to the batting, and we do that with our stick glue. So one thing that you can do to make sure that you're getting this lined up correctly is just go along the edge of this batting here on this side and do the same thing with the other piece. And then when you go to trim it down after quilting, then you should be good to go for the next piece. Let's go at my vantage point. And notice here that this sticks out a little bit. That doesn't matter. That's outside the seam allowance. I mean, that's, yeah, it'll be fine. All right, so I'm going to put this glue on there. And notice I'm holding down the fabric. You know what happens if you don't hold it down. So what I've decided to do on quilting this, in fact, I'll probably quilt this after the second piece has been added, because I'm going to put quilting lines this way with this diagonal line, so that all my quilting lines are going toward the center. So I'm not even going to stitch this one. All I'm going to do is, actually I might just join this and see, well, no, I do need to add my second piece of batting. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that off after I heat set it. So the second one, I'm going to show you how to do the first one all the way through. The second one is in reverse, and I'll fast forward through that whole next half section. Well, they do have section names. This one that I'm doing is section A, and then I'll be doing section B, and then the and then you have the yeah, the middle strip is part of section A. And I'm not doing it the way that it was suggested I put it together. And by the way, this pattern block is actually mine. I haven't been able to find it anywhere. That's why it's called the split chevron. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move this aside. I am back and got this all stitched together and zigzagged, and now I'm ready to do the glue and the pressing of it. So I think it looks pretty good. So on to this. And it's basically, I'm repeating what I did before. It's really simple, this part is. Flip it over, do the other side. And secure it down. So I'm going to check my little next piece here. It might completely fit there without having to add another piece of batting like I got prepared here. So let's take a look. See, I'll be able to fit the whole thing on the batting. So that's good. I'm glad I just decided to do that. So now it's just a matter of what's going on here. Oh, wrong side. Duh. That's what's wrong. Let's try this one. This is correct. So basically I want this to line up like that. And it may look like I've done it wrong, but if I stitch it together, it should line up correctly because I cut my pieces out exactly. So this should go like this. And then my seam allowance would go right here. And it kind of looks like it's not going to fit. Because that looks like it's definitely off. And I followed my, let me double check my size here. And I want my weight for this one. That way it just stays in place. If you've been watching my block videos, you know what the weight is for besides keeping the ruler in place. Okay, so this will be used in a future project, so it's too big for me to throw away. Alright, so the next step is to grab the next piece, put the ruler aside, and I'm going to pull out my picture here. I really should have made a big copy of this. Okay, so the next piece, we just added this piece right here. Now we're going to add this piece. So we pull that fabric out. See if you imagine it like this. All right. And here is the next piece. And it's going to be put together like this. Again, I want to make sure that I line up the top and also the bottom when I go to flip it and glue it down. Hopefully it'll work the first time. All right. Yeah, if I line up, see, if you look closely on the pattern pieces, they have the little corners cut off, and you're supposed to be able to line those up. And it looks like I'll be able to, so that's what I'm going to concentrate on. I'll line those up. And I'm going to do it from my vantage point so that I can see what I'm doing. Again, with the washable school glue, and this is Elmer's washable school glue. I found that this tends to work the best for this. I've tried dollar store washable glue, school glue, and it just does not hold as well. All right, so I'm lining this up, making sure that this little cut thingy over here in this corner lines up, and this one lines up as well. And make sure you do your 1/4 inch seam. And if you have any questions or comments, please, I want to hear them. Nobody's responding to my videos. I'd like some feedback. I want to know whether you like this, if you want me to continue doing these, or do you want me to start quilting like everybody else does? Basically quilt as you go or regular. I'm willing to do that. And I'm willing to make this a really small baby size quilt. I think the colors are fun enough for that. I'm willing to do that, but I would love feedback. And I'll still put them together with the sashing. But today's project, you're going to see how I actually join the blocks with using the sashing. And the method that I'm going to use is not completely my own. All right, this doesn't look right. Oh, come on. Oh, that is correct. See how I even get mixed up. This is correct, because imagine this center strip right here, and then you have one little more piece that's going here. So I got mixed up there for a second. Everybody does that. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and apply my glue. And somewhere in this video is going to be a secret code. And nobody's been responding to that either. Register to my website. Get a free points account. You can ignore the $95 membership fee if you don't want to be a gold member right off, and still have access to these patterns. I am here to stay. I've been online for over 20 years. 1997. The quilting is just starting up now, but I'm not a new quilter. I've been quilting for a long time. I've been sewing for a long time. Since 1978 is when I started sewing. So I've been sewing a long time. I do know what I'm doing. This is a new method that I started back in 2018. 1918, oh good grief. I started making quilts in this method in 2018. Maybe it was January 2019. Anyway, I've made 2 quilts in this method. 2 full, kings, one king size, one queen size, and then I have a throw that I made that is partially quilt as you go and also quilt as you piece. So, and those were put together with joining strips, but this is actually going to be joined with sashing. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, go to the sewing machine, do my 1/4 inch seam on this, and then again I will make sure that this works also. I will line up my batting with my batting so that way it'll be correct, and I'll do a zigzag stitch here to make them stay together. Okay, grab my ruler and rotary cutter, and let's get this cut. I should be lined up. Just hold it up to a light. Yeah, it works. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and cut this. I think I'm going to cut it from the fabric side. Makes more sense. So this batting piece can actually be used for crumb piecing later on. Or you might be able to use it in the same block. I'll try. I'll set it aside for now. Okay, so this piece is ready for its next piece. And yeah, it should be okay. There we go. All right, so this is ready. This is the upper right corner of the block. So the next piece to add is this, and I am going to go ahead and glue these together. I need to make sure they're oriented correctly. See my picture here. So this is going to be, you have to make sure you line up the tops. Let me grab my ironing pad here. Set this ruler aside. And what you're going to do is you're going to line up this edge to this edge. Just double checking my photo. Yeah, it looks like it's not going to fit, but it will when you do this. See, the 1/4 inch should fall into place where it needs to be. But you do want to make sure. See, it looks weird. It looks like it's not going to fit. But you want to line this up. I'm going to do it from this perspective. Yep, this is correct. Okay, you're going to line this up. And you want to make sure that you're at your 1/4 inch right here. You're going to do your 1/4 inch seam allowance. At some point this is going to go away. But I'm going to go ahead and glue that down. And I'm using water-soluble, washable school glue. And put dots of glue on, and I meant to do smaller than that. You don't need big ones. You do not need big glue dots. All right, make sure that you are a 1/4 inch away. And then press it in place. And you're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Your stitch length should be 3.0 because you're going through 4 layers of fabric and a layer of batting. And at the same time, what you're going to do, or right after you get that stitch done, you're going to apply the batting this way with a zigzag stitch. And what you want to do is once you have it stitched, you're going to fold this over to make sure that your batting goes all the way to the edge, all the way across, and pull it forward as much as you need to. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over, and I want to make sure that this piece of fabric lines up with the blue piece of fabric that's underneath it. And again, I'm going to glue this in place. And I'm going to follow the fabric line and not the batting line. I'm following this to put the fabric on. My batting is a little off, but I don't, it'll be fine in the end. Okay, so take this to the machine and make sure that it's going to line up, straight line. In fact, you could probably figure that out now, how much you need to be away, because that needs to be a straight line. And then just do a zigzag stitch. The zigzag stitches, when you do those, you want the stitch length to be at 4.0 and you want the stitch width to be at 6.0. It's been stitched and it's ready to be pressed. So the next step that we do is we're going to apply glue to this here, this section here, and we're going to adhere it to the batting. Okay, and make sure that you do your even, consistent stitch line. I ended up doing 2 stitch lines because it wasn't lining up. Now it's lining up. So we're going to flip it this way. And don't worry too much about that batting. It's going to work in the end. And then you press it down. Same with that batting. Don't worry too much about it. That's not within the seam. That's outside the seam allowance, or in the seam allowance. It's not a problem. See, this is just the very edge. This will be fine. Okay, so turn this over and double check this side. Looks good. All right. Then we do the same thing on this side. We apply the glue. And we're going to lay this one down. And then we're going to trim off the excess batting. Then we can stitch on the next piece. And yes, you can still use your scraps in scrap quilting or crumb quilting. So we're going to keep the scraps. And I'm going to be doing a crazy patch or a crumb block in this section with the scraps that I have left over. In fact, I'm not doing these pieces in any particular order, these blocks. I haven't decided what order they're going to be put together. For now, I'm just trying to come up with 30 blocks that will work with this method. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this. I figured out what the problem is. It's got to be like this. Had the right piece, just the wrong size. This goes like this. So this should fit. All right. So I just want to make sure that this will end up correctly going like this. So I have to overlap, see where my 1/4 inch lies. And that should work. So if I flip it, make sure that this is lined up at 1/4 inch. This should line up perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and glue it down. Boy, see, it's easy to get turned around on this. So make sure that's my 1/4 inch. Well, let's hope I do this right. See, that should be 1/4 inch there, and that should be 1/4 inch there. And where is my special 1/4 inch ruler? There we go. Look like that. Now that'll work. Okay. Oh boy, this is gonna work. Just had it on the wrong side. All right, let's do that again. 1/4 inch. See, this is one of those situations where you might want to go ahead and draw a 1/4 inch line here and here to make sure it's going to line up correctly. And I did not do that. All right, so let me double check here. And this is glue. This will come undone easily if I have to move it. So there's one line, and there's another one. And this line really only needs to be there long enough for you to put the glue there. So it looks like I've got this one over here, and that looks pretty good. So I'm going to heat set that. So there's a tip. If you're unsure, go ahead and mark it. And you only need to mark it at the ends. And because I've got this is not the side. See, this is where the yellow strip is going to go. So this is going to get trimmed off. And I'm going to have to add to this one. Or I might just go ahead and trim that off. We'll see. I'll probably just add to it, you know, put this here and just stitch it. See, I'm trying not to waste too much. So I'm going to go ahead and put this piece here. And again, So I'm going to go ahead and draw my 1/4 inch lines here using my pen, because I want this to line up correctly. And I should have done that with my very first piece, but I didn't, and I put the cap on the wrong end. Okay. Now, my vantage point so I can see what I'm doing. Put my glue on it. And this should work. Yeah. And that should work. And I'm going to go ahead and take this over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to do a zigzag stitch here after I do the 1/4 inch seam here. And because I know this is lined up on both sides, will be good. And you notice I don't use pins in this method. It's not necessary. And I also do not use a walking foot. It's not necessary when you use glue. And I'll be right back. So it's been stitched, and now it's ready to be glued down. And if you can see the zigzag stitching, let me see if I can get you closer. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see. Whoops, whoops. Oh boy. Yeah, it won't focus. Let's see if I can get it to focus. Nope, that's not going to work. Okay. Well, anyway, let's put it back to where it was. It's there. The zigzag stitching is there. So let's just get on with it. That was a fun ride, wasn't it? Okay. I won't do that again, I promise. That was silly. All right, flip it over, glue it down, heat set it. All right. I know why I got mixed up. I got interrupted. And I was on a roll, but I'm back. Okay. So this looks pretty good, actually. It's going to need to be trimmed so we can get ready for the next step. I mean, it's off ever so slightly, but I think we're going to camouflage that with the next seam. All right. So imagine this. This is the center. So I'm going to trim all this off, and yes, it can be used in crumb quilting. And then I'm going to set this one aside, and I'm going to do the other side because that's next. So let's go ahead and trim this. And all I'm going to do is trim the batting off and that little tiny piece that's there, give it a straight edge, and we'll be good to go. Alrighty. I just want a straight edge. And that's the correct size. I'm going to put my little weight on it. Little weight. It's a 4-pound weight. And I do have an affiliate link on my website. And I put a link to the website and to this page of the products that I've been using in my videos. And this is there, and that's there, and that's there. This is not. This is. Yeah, I think we'll be fine. And I'm going to trim this off. You know, in sewing, nothing's ever perfect. Okay, I'm going to line that. I'm lining things up with the batting. And yes, I'm only 1/8 of an inch, so that'll get compensated for. I need my weight again, because I'm going to trim that up. and that will be used for stuffing. Okay, this is the center. And I'm going to set this aside for now, and I will do the next part fast forward. There is something actually I wanted to talk about before I do the fast forward on this. For cutting out your pieces, it's going to come with template pieces. And a tip that I can give you, which will help you cut them out, is go ahead and put some double stick tape on the back side of your patterns. And when you use them to cut your pieces out, you can put this on the fabric and then lay your ruler down and cut this way, and it will stay put. This is actually stuck. And the double stick tape, you know, it works really, really well. And if you plan on making a whole bunch of this particular block to make a big quilt with just these blocks, you can actually go ahead and laminate these and cut them out, and then you'll have something that will last. Or make them out of thick cardstock or whatever. But these are just made out of copy paper. All right. Alright, so before I go on to the center part, I'm going to go ahead and do some quilting on this. I'm going to do quilting this here and here and here and here, 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 and here. And then I'll show you how I'm going to join these together with a center strip. So I will go ahead and quilt those, and I'll be right back. So they are both quilted, ready to go on to the next step, which is joining these two sides with a yellow, well, with a center strip. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. And first things first, we got to get our fabric ready. So I cut these to the exact size that they need to be, and the front side is going to actually get stitched down here, and then it will get stitched here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that first, but before I do that, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare the back strip. This is very, very important. I've cut this piece of cardboard. Actually, it's cover weight cardstock is what it is, and it's 1/4 inch narrower than my fabric needs to be, or is going to be, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this back ahead of time 1/4 inch, because this edge is going to get stitched down, hand stitched down, and I want to be able to glue this down, fold it over just like this, and I'm going to iron it down, and then I'm just waiting for the iron to heat up. Okay, so first of all, you can finger press it just to get it started. Then you take your iron and you press it down. Bad angle because of the camera. And once I get this part, pressed down a little bit. Now I know there are products out there that will do this, and I think they're metal, but this works just as good. You could probably get away with using actual cardstock as well. Alright, so now that I've gotten that down, I'm going to apply some glue to in here, and you want to try to avoid the actual crease with the dots of glue. You're just trying to hold it in place. Just teeny tiny dots. Just make sure you actually get some in there. And it's important that you only do 1/4 inch, and gluing it down will ensure that it's going to stay in place. So it looks like I'm going to have to add a little bit more glue, because I know I didn't put that much in there. Okay, now get over here. Then we'll press it down, because this is going to be stitched to the back side of one of those sides. This edge will get stitched down. Yeah, just gluing it down will make it easier to hand stitch. All right, so let's get this going. Make sure we're oriented correctly. These are the upper outside. This is the back. This is the front. And what you want to do is you want to go ahead and put both pieces on one side of the fabric first. So I'm going to glue this down. This is how I'm going to be joining blocks as well. I'll be using this technique. So I'm going to walk you through the whole thing. I'm going to show you everything. Okay, then you're going to glue this on. And I made it too long on purpose. But the width is exactly the width it needs to be. Now you can cut this one a little bit wider if you want to do a bigger fold over, but I'm trying to be as precise as possible. I'm kind of crazy that way. And then you're going to lay this down so that the fold is away from your seam line, and you're going to lay this down and glue it to the other side. And you can machine stitch it down if you want to, but if you don't want the look of the top stitches, you're going to have to sew it by hand. And this is actually how I'll be joining the blocks. And when it comes time to do the long strips to join either the rows or the columns, depending on which way I'm going to do it, I'm going to be adding cornerstones, and I'll be doing it for the whole length. I'll be adding the cornerstones between the strips. And of course, these strips will be cut exactly the size they need to be, like 10.5. And I'll be adding cornerstones to them. I'm looking forward to being able to put this quilt together. All right, so this step here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do my 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm not going to bother with putting the batting in just yet. At some point, I'm going to be joining this side to here, and then we're going to open it up, and then we're going to fill it with batting. So I'll be right back. All right, so it's been stitched down. I'm still going to do the tug thing. In fact, I'm going to do it to both sides. And I'm also going to set the seam with the iron on both sides. All right, and then I'm still going to tug on this, and I'm going to press it just so that it's going to make a memory. Okay, then you're going to fold it back and you're going to keep it back, and then this one also gets pressed. All right, and then the next step is make sure you have your other piece oriented correctly and lay it down. Line up your bottom edge and your top edge. In fact, you can probably go ahead and just trim this off at this point, so that way you know you're going to get it lined up. So why don't I do that? I'll trim the top and the bottom. So that way everything will line up, and I'm going to do that to all layers, all at the same time. So that way I know that when I put it together, it's going to work. Okay. Put my, you know what? I'm going to actually fold this back. and I want to look at it from this side. This will ensure that we get it all lined up. Okay. Put the batting and a little weight on it. Turn it around. Do the same thing. Hopefully I'm still at my 10.5. There we are, 10.5, give or take an eighth of an inch. Okay, so the next step, make sure we're oriented correctly, just like this. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this on here, line it up and glue it. Okay, I put too much there. I'm slightly worried about this section here. I think we're going to be fine. Okay, line it up, press it down. Now I'm going to go ahead and do my 1/4 inch seam. Okay, so it's ready to go on to the next step. And what you want to do at this point is you need to press this open, but you got to make sure that this goes into the middle. So I'm going to press it from here. And then to find out how much batting you're going to put in between, because you're going to put it between here, and I'm going to actually stitch it to one of these sides first, but I need to take a measurement. I need to know how big of a strip I need. And here it looks like I'm from 5 to, I got 1 5/8 inches. So I'm going to cut my strip to 1 5/8 inches. That will fit in between. Okay, I have a strip here ready to be cut. And then I'll stitch it to this side, and then I'm going to lay it down, put some adhesive in here, and then this, actually I'll stitch it to this side, and then this should just cover your stitching line over on this side. All right, so 1 5/8 inches. And I can use that in another project. None of it's actually going to go to waste. Okay, so the next step here, you have a choice that you can make. Of course, I am actually going to stitch this with using the zigzag stitch to this edge here. But then I need to decide whether or not I want to hand stitch the other side to this edge. And I probably won't. But I'm going to go ahead, go to the machine, and do my zigzag stitch on here. I'll be right back. Okay, so it's stitched on. The next step is to go ahead and get this ready for gluing it down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some glue here. And this will keep the batting in place. And this time I'm not going to bother hand stitching this down. I don't think it's necessary. And then I go like this and push this down. Now I want this to get adhered. I mean, see how careful measuring? It worked. So I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to iron this down. And I am going to hand stitch the back. Just do a, like, you know, stitch it down like you would binding. Stitch it down like you would do applique stitches. And I'm sure you know how to do that. There's plenty of YouTube tutorials out there on how to do that. I can do a few stitches to show you. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put the glue on here, including this edge here. And to protect my surface, I'm just going to put this piece of card underneath. Oh, by the way, if you want to take a look and see if this is actually going to reach, it does. It's perfect. But I want it glued down. Including this. I don't need the liquid glue for that. Then we're going to flip this back over and we're going to iron it in place. And I'm not going to quilt it until I'm actually done, because I'm doing edge to edge quilting like I did the rest of this, and it will get caught up in its seam allowances when I go to stitch the blocks together. That's really cool, I think. Now, which side needs to be stitched down? It's this side. So I'm going to be using white thread like I did with the rest of it. I'll be right back. Alright, so I've decided to show you a few whip stitches, and I need to put on my clip-on glasses. My glasses are not enough, so I put these on. So bear with me. And I've actually waxed my thread. I'm using the same thread that I used to stitch this whole thing together. And now that I can really see what I'm doing, I'm just going to put my needle in here, in between the layers here. How about I just put it in there? And I'm going to catch some thread of the fabric, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing. But I am going to pick up a couple of threads here. And I'm sure you all know how to do this. And take the smallest stitches that you can. And just work your way across, of course. And I like to try to make it look like it was sewn by machine, but of course it's really hard to do. And I've waxed my thread with beeswax from this thing. These are really, really cheap. You can probably get them anywhere you can get sewing supplies. Don't know if you can see this or not. Basically what I'm doing, oh, come on. There we go. See, that's pretty much what I'm trying to do here. Whoops, I dropped it. And one strategy that I have to keep it from tangling is I kind of hang on to this piece over here in this hand to keep it from tangling. And yes, I'm using double strand because I want it to hold. So I'll show one more, and then I'm going to go do this off camera. Okay, I'll be right back. All of the stitching is done, the hand stitching is done, the quilting is done. Now it's time to check my measurements and see if I can trim it down to the 10.5 inches that it's supposed to be. I think we're already there, if not slightly under. And if I am slightly under, I'll just, you know, when it comes time to stitching them to other blocks, I'll just be mindful of that and extra careful. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to trim this down at all, except for cutting off the batting. So I might as well go ahead and do that. So next time I'll try to make this a little extra big. Make it to be 10.5 to begin with, you know, for finished size. And then it will end up being the size I want it to be. And I think I'll try to straighten out this edge. Yeah, I'm definitely going, I think I'm actually going to go ahead and frame this out. I think that'll be fine. I think that will look cool. Yeah, I'll add a 1-inch frame or something to it when I need to. Because basically that block is done. I'm just going to have to add a 1-inch frame around it before I join it to the other squares. All right, I wanted to thank you for watching, and I hope you got that secret code earlier in the video, and you can use that to go ahead and redeem, you know, claim it, claim the points, redeem them to get this pattern. And until next time, oh yeah, please leave comments. I want to hear from you. And please share with other people who you know quilt. And until next time, thank you for watching and have a great day. Goodbye.